Washington says it's protecting stability. Riyadh insists supply is steady. But on the ground, tankers reroute under fake flags, prices spike, and two Asian giants, China and India, are cashing in on America's crackdown. The world's largest democracy and the world's second largest economy are suddenly finding common ground in cheap Russian oil. Could US strategy be backfiring, empowering its rivals while leaving Americans to foot the bill? The world energy map has never been this fragile. At the center of the storm, three moves colliding at once: US sanctions on Iranian oil, OPEC Plus refusing to raise output, and Russia selling crude at rock-bottom prices. Each decision alone is disruptive. Combined, they're shaking the very foundation of how oil flows, who profits, and who pays. Let's start with Washington. For decades, US sanctions have been the go-to weapon against Tehran. This time, the White House doubled down, cutting off Iranian crude from global buyers, threatening penalties on any nation that dares defy. On paper, it's about pressure, squeezing Iran's economy, signaling strength. But oil is not just an Iranian story. It's the bloodstream of the world economy. Block one artery, and the shock ripples everywhere. Now look at OPEC Plus. The cartel, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, could have stepped in, boosting production, calming nerves, balancing the loss. But they didn't. Riyadh sent a clear message: supply will remain steady. Translation: they won't dance to America's tune. And here's where the plot thickens. Enter Beijing and New Delhi, both nations thirsty for energy, both eager to cushion their fragile economies from rising costs. They saw opportunity where others saw risk. Russian crude, shunned by the West, suddenly had two massive takers. China and India snapped it up, sometimes at $30 per barrel less than Brent benchmarks. That's not just a bargain, that's leverage.
So what happens when two rising powers secure discounted energy lifelines while the US pays higher costs at home? The answer is reshaping alliances, trade routes, and the global balance of power. Think about the mechanics. Tankers sailing under flags of convenience, disguising cargo origins, shadow fleets built overnight to bypass sanctions, black market intermediaries profiting from opaque transactions. Oil, once traded in clear daylight, now flows in murky channels. Transparency collapses, and with it, predictability. Energy markets thrive on trust. Remove that, and chaos becomes the rule. But let's rewind for context. The last time US sanctions cut deep, 2018, India reluctantly scaled back Iranian imports under Washington's pressure. China pushed back but faced threats of secondary sanctions. The result? Short-term compliance, long-term resentment. Fast forward to today, and the resentment has matured into quiet defiance. Both nations are signaling we'll secure energy on our terms, not yours. This shift carries weight. India, once viewed as America's swing partner in Asia, is openly buying record volumes of Russian oil. China, already locked in rivalry with Washington, uses cheap crude to fuel its manufacturing machine, keeping exports competitive, keeping factories alive. The irony: American sanctions meant to isolate adversaries might be feeding them instead. Meanwhile, US consumers feel the sting. Prices at the pump inch higher, inflation resists cooling, families cut spending, businesses feel squeezed, and yet China and India thrive on discounts. That's not just an energy divide, that's a geopolitical contradiction. Global institutions feel it too. The International Energy Agency warns of distorted flows. Shipping insurers flag rising risks. Even Western oil majors, once dominant, find themselves sidelined as state-to-state deals bypass traditional channels. The very architecture of the oil market is bending under pressure.
Now consider the political angle. Washington projects power through sanctions, but sanctions without global consensus create loopholes. Loopholes invite exploitation, and exploitation reshapes alliances in ways America never intended. China and India aren't just buying oil, they're building resilience, autonomy, and bargaining power. Look closer at OPEC+. Saudi Arabia knows every extra barrel produced lowers prices, hurting their own revenue. Why would Riyadh undercut itself to ease US pressure? Add Russia into the mix, using energy as both lifeline and weapon, and the cartel's unity grows sharper. The US finds itself isolated, shouting for stability while rivals quietly rewrite the rules. Let's talk numbers. Before sanctions tightened, Iranian exports hovered around 1.5 million barrels per day. Cut that out, and global supply shrinks by nearly 2%. Add OPEC Plus restraint, and the gap widens. Meanwhile, Russia reroutes about 2 million barrels daily into Asia, much of it toward China and India. That's a structural shift, not a blip. Here's the hidden truth. Every crisis redistributes power. In the 1970s, OPEC weaponized oil against the West. In the 1990s, Gulf Wars reshaped energy routes. Today, the US may be unintentionally scripting the next realignment, where its own allies hedge bets and its rivals grow stronger. And the deeper question looms, if energy is power, who really holds it now? The storm doesn't end here, because beneath the barrels and sanctions lies something bigger: currencies, payment systems, and the architecture of global trade itself. As more oil flows east, transactions shift away from the dollar. China pushes yuan-based deals. India experiments with rupee settlements. Russia avoids Western banks entirely. This isn't just about oil, it's about financial sovereignty. And when financial sovereignty moves, geopolitics follows. Imagine a world where energy no longer clears through New York or London, but through Shanghai, Moscow, or New Delhi. That's not just economic diversification, that's the slow erosion of America's leverage.
The result, Washington's gamble may secure short-term headlines, but risks long-term consequences it can't control. Inflation at home, allies uneasy abroad, rivals emboldened overseas. And yet, policymakers frame it as stability. But stability for whom? For American households squeezed at the pump? For Europe, still paying premium prices after cutting off Russian supply? Or for China and India, quietly strengthening their hands while avoiding the costs? This is the paradox. A policy meant to punish adversaries may end up punishing allies. A strategy built on pressure may instead build resilience in the very rivals it seeks to weaken. In the energy market, it thrives on one thing above all: predictability. Remove that, and you invite volatility. Volatility doesn't stay contained. It ripples from Wall Street to Main Street, from Riyadh to Beijing, from Delhi to Washington. The story isn't finished, because beyond today's headlines lies tomorrow's question. If America's sanctions gamble is backfiring, what comes next? Who adjusts? Who pays? And who emerges stronger? Because here's the reality. Oil isn't just barrels on ships, it's contracts, currencies, insurance, and the arteries of global trade. And right now, those arteries are being rerouted, quietly, strategically, and with consequences the world has barely begun to grasp. Look at the financial plumbing. For decades, nearly every oil deal cleared through the dollar. That gave Washington unmatched leverage. Cut off a bank, freeze a transaction, and you choke an adversary. But with Russia forced out of that system, new channels are emerging. China settles more oil trades in yuan. India experiments with rupees. Even Gulf states entertain alternatives. This is not an overnight collapse of the petrodollar, but it's the first serious erosion in half a century.
And here's the dangerous irony. The more Washington leans on sanctions, the more incentive rivals have to escape its reach. Every new penalty strengthens the very push for alternatives. Consider the shadow fleet, hundreds of old tankers bought up by mysterious shell companies, sailing under obscure flags. They carry sanctioned oil across oceans, without Western insurance, without Western tracking. It's a parallel market worth billions, and it grows every time sanctions tighten. The West loses transparency, rivals gain flexibility. This creates a chilling scenario: two oil worlds, one clean, legal, dollar-based, the other murky, discount-driven, sanctions-proof. And guess which one is expanding fastest? Now, zoom out.
Global stability relies on predictable flows: who supplies, who consumes, who pays. But with OPEC Plus digging in, Iran cut off, Russia rerouted, and China, India empowered, predictability has evaporated. What fills that vacuum? Volatility, speculation, and political brinkmanship. Take Europe. After cutting Russian imports, it now competes for Middle Eastern and US barrels at premium prices. Meanwhile, its industries lose ground to Asian competitors fueled by cheap Russian crude. That's not just an economic disadvantage, it's a strategic vulnerability. Take America. Its refineries struggle with higher input costs. Its consumers face sticky inflation. Its strategic reserves, already drained in past crises, are limited, and yet its rivals enjoy a cushion. Ask yourself, who really gained from the sanctions? Take China. With discounted oil, it buys not just energy, but time. Time to stabilize growth, time to strengthen manufacturing, time to push global trade in its currency. India too, balancing ties with Washington, but pocketing the savings. 2 billion people fueled at a discount while the West pays a premium. That's leverage on a global scale. And leverage turns into power in diplomatic negotiations, in trade deals, in military planning. Energy is the foundation. And with Russia supplying, China buying, and India hedging, the foundation is tilting eastward.
Now think about future scenarios. Scenario 1. Prices stay high, sanctions deepen, OPEC Plus holds steady. Result: inflation in the West, resilience in Asia, and widening global inequality. Scenario 2. Black markets dominate, shadow fleets expand, and official institutions lose credibility. Result: a fragmented, unstable energy order. Scenario 3. The petrodollar weakens as alternative currencies rise. That's not just an oil story, that's a power shift story. And every scenario shares one theme. The US loses control. Control over prices, control over flows, control over the rules. For a nation that built its post-war supremacy on energy dominance, that's a profound reversal. But here's the deeper layer. Sanctions are not surgical tools. They are blunt instruments. They punish, but not always the target. Iran struggles, yes, but so does the West with higher costs. Russia suffers discounts, but keeps lifelines alive through Asia. And in the middle, China and India, supposed partners, supposed swing states, quietly transform into beneficiaries. That's the unintended consequence of America's gamble. History offers warnings. The 1973 oil embargo backfired, driving Western economies into recession, forcing painful reforms, and birthing a new global order. The Gulf Wars reshaped alliances, but at enormous costs. Today's sanctions echo that same pattern: short-term tactical moves with long-term strategic costs. And once set in motion, these costs are hard to reverse. The human angle is no less stark. When Americans pay more at the pump, when Europeans pay more for heating, when inflation eats into wages, the frustration builds. Meanwhile, headlines in Beijing and New Delhi highlight resilience, not crisis. That narrative matters. Perception is power, and power shapes the future. So what does the future look like? Not a single collapse, but a steady drift, away from US-centered systems toward multipolar energy blocks, toward parallel markets, toward a world where Washington's word no longer dictates the terms.
This doesn't mean America has no tools. It still holds unmatched financial muscle, unmatched naval reach, unmatched alliances. But tools lose potency when rivals adapt faster. And right now, adaptation is the story. China adapts with yuan oil trades. India adapts with flexible diplomacy. Russia adapts with shadow fleets. America sanctions and watches the rest adjust. The conclusion is sobering. By seeking to isolate, Washington may be isolating itself. By pressing for stability, it may be fueling volatility. By punishing adversaries, it may be empowering rivals. And the cost is not just geopolitical, it's personal. It's every household bill, every gas station receipt, every strain of inflation. Global energy has always been chaotic. But this chaos feels different because it's not born of war alone. It's born of strategy colliding with reality, of policy colliding with markets, of ambition colliding with unintended consequence. And the question that remains, in this new oil order, who truly wins? Because one truth stands firm. Energy is not just about today's price. It's about tomorrow's power. And that power is shifting, barrel by barrel, deal by deal, toward those who seize opportunity in crisis. The US-China-India oil gamble isn't just a headline. It's a turning point, a moment when sanctions, supply, and strategy collided and revealed the fragility of the entire system. Whether it leads to chaos or a new balance will depend not on today's sanctions, but on tomorrow's choices. Choices that will determine who pays, who profits, and who prevails in the age of energy uncertainty.